Hey guys, John Velasco here with VRSource. Growing up, the first mechs game I really remember playing and enjoyed a lot was a game called Battle Drone, and it was for the PC. And in it, you got to pilot a mech, and you were playing in this arena and just battling against another opponent. It was pretty good action, but a little bit on the slower pace side. So nowadays, we have VR, and this game called RIGS Mechanized Combat League kind of reminds me of that game, just a modern twist of it. Just because you are controlling a rig, but there's a slight twist, and that's in the form of the sports element with the game. There's really no story to RIGS. Just like any sports game out there, whether it's baseball, basketball, hockey, it's all about playing matches, and that is it. So in the game, you pilot a rig, which they call a mech in the game, and it's basically 3 versus 3. So you play as one player in a team, and the whole point is, of course, winning matches. And when you win matches, you earn money for upgrades, and that's about it. Visually, I gotta say, the game looks polished, especially for PlayStation VR games. You have some detailed looking rigs, and I do like the fact that the arenas are pretty bright and colorful, so there's a lot of lighting going on, explosions too, your weapons firing, so a lot of good visuals there. And on top of that, it has a pretty smooth frame rate to actually match the intensity of the action, and it never really takes a hitch at any moment. Now this is your typical mechs game because I like to describe it as a football game with mechs as the players. You use a DualShock 4 controller and it's set in the first person view of the cockpit. So if you played any mechs game before, you'll pretty much be acquainted with the controls layout. You could jump, you could strap, you could fire your weapons, you have a speed boost at your disposal. But what sets RIGS apart from other mechs games is of course that sports element. And you also have these different rig modes you could choose from. They also add a level strategy when you're playing matches. For example, if you go into repair mode, your rig will repair faster when you're not fighting enemies. Or alternatively, you also have the power-up mode so that you have increased firepower with your weapons. Like I said, this game has a sports arena element to it, and there are 3 particular game modes that mix up the gameplay. The first one's called Power Slam, and you're basically getting your rig into overdrive, and you jump through a central goal area in the arena to score points. The second one's called End Zone, and it's pretty much football because you control a holographic ball and you just try your best to reach the end zone to score points. And the last one's called Takedown, and it's probably the most straightforward one of the bunch because you're just basically smashing your opponents to score. The whole point of the game is to win the match at the end, so whoever has the most points win, and they earn money. And the sports element here is definitely what sets RIGS apart from other mechs games because you have a lot of action, it's a lot of intensity too, and you never know who's going to win at the end because when you get certain power-ups and upgrades, at any moment the tide can change. So you're always on the edge of your seat the entire time, even at the end. Because there's a lot of movement and intense action in the game, it can be jarring, especially to those who are a little bit more prone to motion sickness, like myself. In fact, after one match even, I found myself pretty nauseous and kind of sick, and it took me roughly 30 minutes just to recover from one match. So it definitely does play some tricks on your senses because all this movement action. You're using the headset to point your crosshair, you're moving your rig forward, backwards, you're jumping, you're shooting. All of this is just very intense. And for people who are prone to motion sickness, you gotta just watch out. But on the flip side, I've had a friend that played the game for easily half an hour to 45 minutes. No issues at all. They enjoyed it and didn't feel sick at all, so it just depends. The nice thing about RIGS is that the headset tracking is spot on for aiming. You just rotate the headset and there's no latency issues whatsoever. Overall, you definitely feel like you're in the cockpit piloting this giant rig. The single player campaign can be a little bit repetitive because you're doing the same thing over, but there is an online aspect of the game, and that's where you have more fun. But there are some long loading times and you're just finding yourself waiting most of the time. But like I said, once you get into the match and start playing, you never know who's going to win because the tides can change instantly. There's a lot of intense action, you have that adrenaline rush, and there's some strategy involved in RIGS. It's $50, and obviously it's one of the more pricey VR games for the PlayStation VR out of the get-go, but if you enjoy RIGS, you enjoy a lot of action, it's a great starter game because it shows off the beauty of VR, all this action and precise movement. It's just a matter of not getting sick though. That's if you're prone, of course. And that's our review of RIGS Mechanized Combat League. It's a lot of action, like I said. If you're very prone to motion sickness, you just gotta watch out. You can't be playing long periods of time. But if you're not, then this game is a lot of fun. So if you guys want to learn more about it, you can check out our website, VRSource, your source for all kinds of reality.